Kemp and Darby. Shout out to Darby, still playing those
Paul,
drums.
I love you, and you're gonna have to forgive me, because this is not the first time, this is not the third time, and this is not the last time. I had our microphones on mute. Oh my God. And so now we got to start over again.
No, you're good.
So what happens is when I pack this thing up, I turn everybody's volume off, and there's so many things I got to check. There's 3 cameras. I always forget to have the volume up. Now, at least this time, I caught it right when I started the intros. Most of the time, it's like when we're in the heart of the conversation, and I go, sorry to break it to you. We were on mute. So we're not on mute anymore, and it's time to go. All right. All right, Paul, you ready to start?
Yeah.
Let's get it going for round 2. All right.
So I love that term, think tank. Think tank. I mean, you know what a think tank is? Like, how's a think tank go, Jim?
Yeah, you know they got cancel culture nowadays. You gotta watch what you say. It's getting real scary out here.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know if I can take the conversation here, but we might as well. It's the Rethink Tank. Looks like you had a little bit too much to think here in the Rethink Tank.
Hey, what's going on, everybody, and thanks for joining me again. Today's a real special episode because when the machine presents you with another one of its events to disrupt us and divide us, and while that machine puts us on teams that we don't even ask for and pins us against each other, the best thing you could do when you're presented with one of these events is to go seek out your friends that are on the other team. Have a conversation, because most of the time you come to learn that we pretty much agree about everything at the heart of the conversation. So, in presenting that, I want to introduce one of my longtime friends and fraternity brothers, my good friend Paul McCreary. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, Geargat. Happy to be here. You're one of my very first Lambda Chi's that I met at Miami, and made a good enough impression. I joined the Brotherhood, and I'm happy every day I did. Gave me, real lifelong friends, and learned a lot being your friend all through college and afterwards.
Yeah, and Paul, so the reason why I'm so excited to talk to you is kind of you set up the perfect foundation. I have had a blast having conversations with you, oftentimes disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fruit in having that. The fact that we can have conversations coming from opposite perspectives, also leaving those conversations not necessarily agreeing, but also it being healthy enough to where there's no disdain. You don't leave the conversation going, well, even though that person's different than me, I dislike them because they hurt my feelings, they made me feel some type of way. So the reason I'm most excited to talk to you about this is because we can approach it from different perspectives and also not get hurt feelings. So Paul, there's some crazy stuff going on right now. When I talk about when the machine presents you with a crazy event, let's just hit it head on. We have this Kyle.
Year 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right?
Yes. Where, I love Zuby. He's this guy on Twitter. He's the one that's gotten me through COVID. And he's now doing this every 100 days. And the tweet always makes my life. And he goes, the toughest part about the first 15 days to flatten, the worst part about the first 15 days to flatten the curve is the first 600 days.
Yep.
And that's where we're at. And so, in the heart of all this angst and concern and mystery of what's going to come next, this propaganda machine presents us with this trial, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And no matter how much people don't want to concern themselves with this, it just keeps being thrown in our face as something that you need to passionately use to pin or target the other side more. Or, it's always this projection of the other. We need to support Kyle Rittenhouse and come out, because if we don't, the other is going to take our guns, or the other is coming after us. We need Kyle Rittenhouse to go to jail because the other is using the system to keep us down, or they're clearly privileged murderers and we need to fight the system. And it's a projection against our neighbors,
It's going into it, it's at the end of the day, it's a fake rivalry. You know, it's not just, it's not right versus left. And there was something that one of my favorite religion professors growing up, or not professors, teachers from high school, told me growing up, you know, passionate, old school Jesuit, you know, Catholic liberation theology and all that jazz. Is he always said everything boils down to the have and have nots. There's never been right or left or center or, you know, whatever. It's always have or have nots. And it's so apparent, I think, on both sides of the aisle now, that both of the Realpolitik party, the corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans, are on the same side.
Boom!
And God forbid,
it's magic.
Well, and God forbid, I mean, you see it so much today. Look at the infrastructure bill, which I'm ecstatic we got through, barely. I mean, it was like planes 3 engines out, barely made it on the tarmac, but we're here. But at the same time, thanks to moderate corporatist Democrats, which I want to preface here, I consider myself a classical liberal Democrat. Think Bill Maher or something like that.
Listen, man, if they know off the preface that you're opposite me, they already assume that.
Yeah, but we got this big, awesome infrastructure bill, which the roads and bridges, which Brent Spence Bridge for our local Ohio people here, 2% of the nation's GDP goes through it, and it was closed half of last year because Kentucky refuses to pay for it. Well, the federal government's paying for it now. But at the cost is we lost any tax on billionaires or millionaires, which was one of the biggest progressive beliefs that we supposedly all fight for. You see AOC and all the big, you know, progressives fight for this, and then the donors come in and they're like, okay, we'll drop it, bye. And you know, I think it's just going to cost my party big in 2022. It's inevitable.
Well, what's really, I think the coolest point you have raised, and what's a new kind of angle to all of this is, and really the angle I want to attack here is, it is an argument of the haves and the have-nots. The sad part is, and the blurred lines or the smoke and mirrors of the whole situation, is convincing each other that the ones that are the haves are the other color, the other team, and you are the have-nots. And so the sad part is, the reality is we're all the have-nots, and the haves, the AOCs and the Ted Cruzes of the world all get to sit back and watch us dogfight each other as they've convinced each other, or convinced us, we're the I don't know, the opposite of the aisle, the haves and the have-nots. They're the other we need to fight. It's incredible.
Well, and funny enough, it is a part of American history. We've been, have you ever read Team of Rivals at all?
No.
Great. So the movie Lincoln, the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, was all based on Team of Rivals. And I have to say, it was recommended to me by one of our deans at Miami. Shout out to Miami University. But he recommended it, and honestly, it is, if like, everyone talks about like Honest Abe, and he was this very idealistic person. He was a dirty, low-down politician, but that's what it took to get the job done at the time. I mean, you still had the same corporate interest under different names.
Really?
You still, I mean, his cabinet.
Can you give me a little bit of a background? I haven't seen that movie, so give me some background on like Lincoln.
So Lincoln was a political realist. He was able to. Now, post-fact, and, you know, we eulogize every president that's been assassinated in the past. You know, we kind of put them on this pedestal. And Lincoln, you know, he won the Civil War. He helped end slavery, one of the original sin of this country. And but the way he had to do it is he was bribing officials. That's what the whole movie Lincoln's about, but Team of Rivals kind of goes through his whole career about it, where they were just basically paying off lame duck Democrats between terms before the war ended. To basically, you know, hey, we'll give you head of the Western Reserve Reservation if you vote for this bill. Like real corrupt politics. Like if you saw it today, he probably would have violated the Hatch Act, but so is a couple other recent presidents. But it just really shows you how much our culture idealizes someone. Even though they've done a lot of things where if we would see this today, we'd be like, "Oh my, he's so corrupt," or he's not woke enough, or something like that. You know.
Well, how about I think you also raised something very interesting. As somebody who is not a Democrat, but I am a liberal, man. I think we've had this conversation before. I've said it on the podcast. I am philosophically liberal. I don't care who you're having sex with or what you're smoking on your property. As long as it doesn't affect me on my property, I'm liberal to it. What's really great, and again, those that aren't considered Democrats oftentimes we catch ourselves, and this is an often talking point, they love sitting back and watching the left eat the left, right? And what that means to some of us is that you'll never be woke enough. That's the problem with woke culture, is that you'll never be woke enough. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. I think at the tip of the iceberg of change, he was the first person to, that's why he's revered in many ways, because one of the greatest things towards progress started from this man. Yeah. And yet, he's still got a shady background. There's still a lot of things he had to do to get there that aren't necessarily great. Barack Obama, the first black president, and honestly, sadly, our last well-spoken president that kind of had the ability to unify us to some degree. Yeah. Also has the most human rights violations with unmanned drone killings. Crazy situation.
Well, great story on that is, so little background, when I was in, I have a foreign policy degree. When I focused a lot on national security studies, we had some great ex-CIA professors at school, taught us a lot. One of the best stories I remember hearing is Anwar Alawaki. He was a Detroit born, so American citizen. He was a terrorist. He was preaching Wahhabist terrorist ideology. And so him and his, I believe, 14, 15-year-old, like young kid, were, hiding out in Yemen. We did a airstrike to kill his father. Justifiably, the guy was supporting terrorist groups. But then we do a completely separate drone strike on a car going through the desert, has his son, after his dad's dead, and maybe like a couple of his cousins. They might have had some AKs or something. It's rural Yemen. Of course, everyone's probably going to have an AK out there in a civil war. And we kill him. Well, when the assistant press secretary is asked about this, point blank, hey, why did you have a separate strike on his son, who is an American citizen and a child under U.S. law, a child, 15-year-old? The guy said, I don't know, maybe he should have had a better father. And this is a liberal Democrat. It once again going into how much deep pockets go. It got zero news coverage.
And here's the other problem. And back to the smoke and mirrors distraction, why we're the fools if we never take this serious. The reality is the president, and that's why it's all a show, Muppet show, none of it's real. Oh, yeah. They come and go. None of it matters. You know who does stay there? The long-term...
the bureaucrats,
exactly.
The intelligence officials, the generals. One of the reasons, and this was, basic 100 level foreign policy school stuff that they teach you, is that, yes, there is Democrat and the president comes and goes, but since post-World War, we've had basically the same national security strategy since then. And I see there are benefits and drawbacks. I think that the liberal world order that we built after World War II is worth saving. I think it is one of the 100%. Reasons why we are not in a world war with China, because we're making too much money to shoot each other. And no matter how big the rhetoric gets, or how much the human rights violations goes up, the simple fact is that both of our billionaire classes are making money off each other. So yeah, they'll let the nationalists fight it out here. You saw that with Trump in China, and then you're seeing that in China now, where there's a lot of nationalist protests there. Because especially after coronavirus, funny enough, if you mainstream Chinese media is putting out the lie that the virus probably actually originated in a lab in America.
No way!
Because the Wuhan lab leak theory is gaining so much traction. And once again, this is their theories we don't know.
If you're closed off from the world, you believe it.
With state media?
Wait, so I got to ask you a question. The reality is we're closed off from the world. We think because we have access, nobody stops us from touching YouTube or Facebook, that we also have unfettered truth. Yeah. How do we know that that isn't fact? Again, unless you are the scientist, this is where, the Eddie Bravos of the world, they get ridiculed, but his approach is the one I relate to the most. I operate in a world where the earth is round and there's a solar system and the sun is, not a light, because all facts point to it. It operates in my reality effectively. It doesn't allow me to get ostracized socially, but the reality is still, the philosopher degree in me is still going to say, I don't know unless I'm in a plane that I can drive, that I feel like a scientist goes around. I'm relying, just like, cells. I don't know. I rely on a lot of people's truths. And people go, they write him off as like, well, you're an idiot because it's provable. It's like, yes, it is provable. But I can't be doing every field of science to know that everything is provably accurate and true. Yeah. So I have to rely on a bunch of people. I say all of this because the reality is we can operate in a world where most likely we are getting the most truth and we are exposed to the majority of the world. But the reality also is it's so just kind of like 1940s because it's a tablet and not a newspaper doesn't mean an echo chamber still can't be created around you. So what if, let's just play out this theory, what if it was created in an American lab? And we had to project it on China. How do we even go about proving it? Just like we had people saying it came from Wuhan and the internet scrubbed them of all of their accounts and they all got canceled and now it's being kind of raised as truth. How do we go and prove that to be true? At some point, there's no way to find out unfettered truth. Well, what are your thoughts?
I think that, yes, it is incredibly difficult to find what is the truth. And I mean, going into law, like you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But you can also you can look at what at least in my point of view, what all the signals are pointing at. And for example, like you had the whole thing with the whole Joe Rogan ivermectin scandal, which if you haven't listened to that podcast with him and Sanjay Gupta, where he pins down Sanjay like for solid, the 3-hour podcast, like, come on, aren't you going to sit here and admit that like they lied? Because he was sitting there like, oh yeah, it sounds like you had a COVID-19 response plan with your doctors. It was approved. It sounds great. And he was like, well, dude, why is your own network saying that? Well, but if you look at, and if you notice, Pfizer advertises on all major news networks, no connection there, is that, well, why would the media be reacting so bad against ivermectin? And once again, I'm not presenting conspiracy theories or how to treat COVID or how it shouldn't be treated. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to try and say that at all. I'm just a regular guy looking at what I see in the media today. If the FDA emergency authorization for the vaccines, which I'm vaccinated myself,
I as well.
Is they lose that emergency use authorization if there's I believe it's a certain level of effective treatment for it that negates the vaccine, which ivermectin, a generic medicine that has no patent, that no one can make a lot of money on, all of a sudden, all the news media outlets are saying, oh my God, it's horse dewormer and blah, blah, blah. When in reality, it's a generic medication that negates a patented medication, which is effective, but obviously not perfect, as we're seeing with breakthrough cases.
Right.
Well, that's where I'm seeing, maybe, obviously the ivermectin thing, there's probably some validity to that because all the talking heads are saying this is horse dewormer. And even the doctor on the same network is like, no, that's not true. It's a drug that's used in both humans and animals. And even there. So I look at, well, why would they lie about that? Why would they cover that up?
Well, the scary part is what makes this so much like the Truman Show is that, like, no matter how much you start picking up on, like, oh, they're all actors, none of this is real. And, like Truman, you start to, want to tear down this set. Like, I want to break through this fourth wall and get back to reality. Once the machine tells you, sponsored by Pfizer, that this guy used horse dewormer, you're crazy if you want to do it, and this approach doesn't work. But then you bring Sanjay Gupta on, and we start having conversations that siphon out that this actually could be a viable option. The scary part is, Paul, like last week, I had a fever. I started getting the chills. I'm like, oh, man, I got COVID coming back up. And I could tell you, no need to be afraid. I had to get my test to prove that it wasn't so I could go back to work. So all negative, I'm all
Glad
set.
You're healthy.
But when I had COVID last November, and I felt it. And I have the vaccine. So but I started getting like the cold sweats. And that was putting me on to like, this might be COVID. I'm worried. I told myself, if I get COVID again, I am doing the Joe Rogan approach. This guy got rid of it in a day. I don't care what you say. The best approach is have sunlight with vitamin D and be a healthy person, because we're learning it's killing fat people. So here's a donut or a free cheeseburger to get your vaccine or entice you to get your cheese. Which
isn't that the American healthcare system in a nutshell?
Bingo, baby.
God forbid we get paid family leave, but I can get a free burger from Carl's Jr. for a vaccine. Great. Thank you, America. Love it.
When even according to the health experts, the most vulnerable are fat people. So we're stuck. But let's just say you break through that. You see that it's all a show. None of it's real. I want to take my life by the balls. I'm gonna be in control of my own life. No matter what they're telling me, I want to use this drug. I want to give it a try. I want to do, and Joe Rogan always has to emphasize that it wasn't just ivermectin. I don't know why everybody keeps ignoring that I always have to say I also did monoclonal antibodies. He always says that. And so it's like they ignore that too. My sister is a pharmacist at the VA hospital. Okay, Allison, I want ivermectin. That's how I want to approach this thing. Where do I go to start this? Like, where do I get it? You're not going to be able to get it because there's no doctor that'll prescribe it to you. My sister, the pharmacist, with the book to prescribe. What do you mean? Well, if it isn't approved for that use, they can't do it. So what does that mean? Joe Rogan being Boko Bucks Joe Rogan and knowing people and being one of the coolest people on the world. So people want to help you. People want to be the doctor that bent the rules to help Joe Rogan. Unless you're Joe Rogan, you're totally disarmed. You don't even get to take that chance and try. And it worked for him. That's the biggest. So the monoclonal antibodies. So, Allison, what is it? Do I have to get an IV? Yeah, you're going to have to get an IV. Ooh, I don't know if I want to do that. My sister goes, well, unfortunately for you, apparently in a few months, they may be coming out with a oral like pill that you could take that'll be monoclonal antibodies. Okay. So how do I go about that? Oh, well, you got to be in severe condition. It's got to be prescribed. So even if I'm not a needle guy, but even if I wanted to go get a drip of monoclonal antibodies because I wanted to get ahead of it like Joe Rogan, you can't do that either. So it just kills me that even at the point at which you go, all right, I see an approach I want to take. What happened to the American way of just having there? Unless you have a doctor that is advertising themselves as the conservative anti-machine, I'll prescribe you ivermectin, hole-in-the-wall doctor.
Which I don't know if I would go to any doctor that tells me their political beliefs. It's like, dude, the med school degree, not your political beliefs.
So it's one, professional suicide to do that.
Yeah.
Two, asinine to even expect somebody to do that, and it's so it's too small. Like nobody's gonna do that. So how many doctors out here are willing to fall on that sword? So in essence, you're completely disarmed from the ability to even seek that out if you wanted to take the chance. Or it's not even a chance if you wanted to do another medical approach. I don't know. It blows my mind.
Well, I think, and going into the ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies, I think the biggest issue there, which is still a classist point, is there's a supply limit. And that's what I've been noticing, because I know with ivermectin specifically, the Biden administration just had to limit how many states are getting what dose of vaccines based on, I think it was based on COVID case rates or something like that. I'm not entirely sure on there. But there's like a huge supply. I like everything now. There's a huge supply crunch. And I mean that to everyone who's talking about like, oh my God, gas prices are out of control, or oh my God, I can't find Nintendos on the shelves anymore. This was going to happen as soon as COVID happened. We shut down the world economy for like over a year. It's going to take a while to start it up. You know, It's like starting a car that's been running for 40 years. You can't just like do that shock and be like, all right, we're just going to turn it. It's like,
I want my PS5. Where is it?
Yeah, like this, first of all, this World Trade System was created in 1945. So this geriatric takes a while, you know, you got to hook up the batteries. And then it's also, you know, instant delivery. Everyone, you know, the amount of packages getting delivered now is like what it used to be for the holidays. Now we're going into the holidays, and because we're in this whole culture that all these these big companies have given us, where if I want it now. You know, I needed to get a part for my car just on a whim. I saw it and I was like, oh, I can get it in the next hour. Cool. I remember when I was in high school or even middle school and I would order stuff and I'd be like, oh boy, I hope it gets here in 3 weeks. And now it's like, if it's not here in the next hour, I want someone's head. And it's just so much of this now culture.
Right.
On top of a world pandemic and, light trade war between the two biggest economies that won't have any consequences at all.
Right. Oh, man. All right. So let's redirect back to the heart of, okay, so we've got this kid, Kyle Rittenhouse. He's from there's all of these talking points thrown out as a use of misdirect. And so he crossed state borders. At first, he had an additional charge of the gun was illegal. He wasn't allowed. All of these. So the question starts to go, why is he in another state with this giant gun? And, it starts painting him in this light.
Why did he have a guy with a camera following him around everywhere?
Yeah.
So I think that definitely it was a publicity stunt. It was definitely a publicity stunt.
Can I ask you, at this point, at what point are we going to start going, how many coincidences? Question, because I ask this all the time. Nobody can find me an answer. There is a number.
Yeah.
There is a number to this answer. How many coincidences until it is mathematically impossible that they are coincidences? Bricks being dropped off at these sites, so all these little things. And as you and I both discussed, because you ironically didn't know this was going to be a major topic of our discussion, but you were prepping up watching videos of, people from the opposite side and of your doing what any intellect would. And it is so interesting what they have footage of. They have footage of the before. Right? They have footage of the before at this gas station. There's some... I'm not some expert on a trial, but they have some sort of incident between the victims and Kyle as he is trying to get to the police. He's confronted by people at this gas station. They have footage of gunshots, him running then away, and it's all on a phone or camera.
Video, and if you've watched any, I like to reserve as just like a policy, just because there's been so many big court cases since we've grown up. Is I always try and just wait until the court case is settled, but this one is just the media is just beating it at you.
Yeah,
and I was listening to it, and I've seen. There was one instance where, they have on the stand one of the guys saying, on video, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And they were able to prove. This case, not to mention, there's a really good YouTuber that I got a take on, and I really recommend him. A guy's named Larry Lawton. He's a ex-jewel thief turned FBI informant, but he does a lot of really good. I followed him a lot for the Derek Chauvin case. Because he spent 20 years in prison. Well, he spent that entire time studying law, and he's kind of like a street lawyer. He really breaks it down for you. And with the Rittenhouse thing, he was talking a lot about the prosecutor. I remember watching the video where, you probably know more about the legal side of this than I do, but when you're doing, general speeches and where you want to take the trial, the judge knows that beforehand. There is I can't remember the name of it, but all the documents are submitted beforehand. It's not like the judge is surprised that, it's not like in a courtroom where they break in and some new random fact, that's already in evidence.
Right.
So apparently this prosecutor's horrible. Yeah, from what
He is very bad.
As someone who doesn't have a lot of
embarrassingly bad.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, as somebody who is in the system around multiple prosecutors a day from all our jurisdictions and stuff, it is amazingly surprising how disappointing prosecutors are.
Yeah.
We put them on a pedestal like they're sophisticated, and I could just tell you those that are on the other side are very disappointed. And that's at a municipal level, but that's also indicative of the whole system.
Well, and
clearly.
And you look at apparently in the judge's chambers, the judge specifically said hey, you can't go down this rabbit hole of questioning to where he was defending property, and then that would have opened a whole new other set of charges, because the judge basically said there's nothing really in the evidence that says they have all this video evidence of a couple of the victims saying that they're going to commit bodily harm, or you see a couple of the victims that were shot which I don't know. They can say victims in the courtroom for some reason. Like there's videos of them lunging at him. Like like in my opinion, I think he's probably going to get proven. He's going to get not guilty. It's just the way the evidence looks. And in my opinion, I still think like this guy, this kid's an idiot. He's obviously was just, he's 17. He's probably in a media echo chamber. He got his mom to drive him to some protest because he wanted to go get an AR-15 and his buddy with a video camera and show how, he's, fighting the resistance and all this stuff. When in reality, he was a scared 17-year-old kid that was put in with a couple people who were threatening his life. They have on video, the guy said, I'm going to kill you. Like he says that on film, which typically, and I'm not a lawyer, I think that might prove self-defense. And then he, this idiot prosecutor like goes down this line of questioning. The judge already said like, hey, don't do that. And then the judge sits there and gets pissed and goes off for 10 minutes. And it's like, first of all, how dare you attack someone for using their Miranda rights on their right to remain silent? That's pretty basic. Like that's apparently like something that a freaking law school intern should know before they become a trial lawyer. And then he's also going to go down a line of questioning that the judge said not to do. And he knows it's going to piss off the judge that already is pissed off at him. He's admonished him twice already. And it's just like, what is this guy doing? Right. It's kind of like flashbacks to the OJ trial where they made him try on the glove live on television because they had to do that to maintain the evidence. They have to have the glove, and they had two gloves and it didn't fit, and we got him off. But if you did it off camera where it wasn't in the media spotlight, it probably would have fit. But he was proven not guilty, so I won't comment on that.
Well, but it is funny how that still haunts him today, regardless of the verdict. Yeah. I mean,
that whole county prosecutor's office is like permanently scarred for the I don't know if it was LA County or whatever, but I mean, come on, it was the most when my parents were getting married at a rehearsal dinner, everyone was watching the OJ trial. Like that's how big it was. I think we were a little young for that, but it was a huge trial.
Dude, that is a good point. Okay, so cut from the same, but going back to the thread of how many coincidences until it's mathematically impossible. Okay, Paul, there are actually two sides of the brain that I'm using here. Mm-hmm. It's one. There's two frames of thought. One is I have to have a conversation in a realm where all of this is real. Yeah. All of this is totally real. Everything that's being reported to us, the world is real. The reality I subscribe to probably too much and is getting a straitjacket waiting for me is how I truly think this is all a Truman Show. And so when I go back to how many coincidences until this is mathematically impossible for them all to be coincidences, you've got perfect camera shots of where it starts. Then you have the incident itself. People trying to hit him with a guy trying to hit him with a skateboard, then like him hitting the ground and someone coming at him with a pistol and him shooting his arm and the whole thing. We've got the act itself and the little bit that transpires after as he leaves, and then magically out of nowhere, we have, and nobody knew this, but I guess the FBI, as we should all anticipate, is filming us 100% of the time, always, and they have some infrared, macroscopic view of the whole scene, and we go, look at these two red dots. This is the victim, this is him, they're having a, little interaction at the gas station, then they move down here, and they have the whole thing, like a video game. Then, for the defense now we've got a perfect, bouquet here. The defense has a collection of videos that were arguably strategically shot at the beginning of it with Kyle Rittenhouse and his big gun in front of the buildings going, I'm just here to protect people. Yeah. I'm just here to aid the medical staff. I have no intent. As if like he knew there was going to be a trial coming in going, I have no intention of hurting anybody, and I am here to, and of course, it isn't like a robot like I'm painting it out to be. It's this soft, sweethearted kid who truly cares. And what is the story we're presented with? You know, one side tells you he crossed state lines to shoot people. Then we come to find out, oh no, his grandma lives in this town. It's 30 minutes away. My guy Kemp's house is 40 minutes away, and I'm there every weekend. So it's not that unrealistic. He works there as a lifeguard. He was working that day in Kenosha, so he only crossed state lines to work there, and then he wanted to help this community that he's a part of. So it's this sweet, innocent story, and we've got all the media bits and footage to go along with it. It's almost like it's a Tiger King movie.
I mean, I don't know. Was he there to protect the kid? I mean, it's...
Wait. So, again, now we've got this whole conversation we can be had where if this was all real, we get to go, was he really there to help? You know, there seems to be some nefarious...
I think he was there to get his clout up. I mean,
Sure.
he went there with a cameraman. You know, he's raised on social media. I think he's just like, I'm going to be probably like the next... the one kid that went to Cove Catholic in Northern Kentucky. He won like what, that $1 billion lawsuit with CNN because they dragged a 60-year-old kid's name through the mud.
Right.
Like that was pretty stupid on their
the kid
part.
with the at the DC.
Yeah, because he had the MAGA hat on,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I think that's what I think Rittenhouse knew. Did he know that he was going to definitely like he would have to take someone's life? I don't think so at all. I think unless you're, you know, someone who's in the military or law enforcement, I don't think you're in that frame of mind. Or if you're like a serial killer, I guess they think of that frame of mind too.
Right.
But not to equate those two groups together. But I think that he went there because he was like, well, I'm going to show my big gun and I'm a big tough guy and look at me standing for the community. I think he was there to basically virtue signaling. Like everyone in our generation has been basically conditioned to do since social media was released when we were kids is that, well, it's not enough to be against something. You have to be actively against something. You have to, it's not that, you know, and it's on both sides of the aisle. It's not just that you support the police. It's you protect the police, you know, so it's coming from that side of the aisle angle for the Rittenhouse case. But it's an all sides thing. Everyone there is there to virtue signal. I mean, what was the video in New York during the George Floyd protest with where you see, and it's a protest about race and racial injustice in policing. But what do you see in this protest? I think it was in New York. It's a bunch of like, and I'm just assuming, looks like richer white women yelling at cops. And it's just like a perfect, like, because they're virtue signaling. It's like, well, I have to show Twitter that I'm this passionate on the issue. And I think, of course, you want to be passionate. You want to show that you support the issues you support. I was out there. I've been in protests before. I've been in climate strikes before. With all that stuff. But there's also an element of self-serving, I think, in so much activism today, which at least kills my spirit when it comes to activism, because it's not like back in the day where it's your hippie uncle that smokes a little too much pot sometimes that's like, hey man, I'm against the draft because like 3 of my buddies got killed in college over this. It's just more like, well, like I have to show that I'm on this side, or that, like we were saying before, we have to be on one side of the boxing ring or you're not getting paid. Or no one's going to recognize you. You have to have a side or no one's going to remember you. Right. Because we apparently all live and die on Facebook now, or Meta.
Well, yeah, you raised some great points. For me, the difficult part about having this conversation is, again, you want to approach this, but the difficult thing is like how difficult it was for me to find on the internet that Kyle was from Artach, Illinois, or whatever it's called. Like, you know, where that city in Illinois. Okay. I had to find there. We know it's in Kenosha. I just wanted to find out the distance. To find little details, how hard it is to find facts, but also to avoid a biased propaganda thrown with it. It's an impossible endeavor. So I'm trying to have a conversation on just what's, real. The problem is trying to figure out what is real. So again, as I kind of laid out, the tough part is something in my heart tells me this is just as fake as like it's like a show. It's to rile us up and distract us as all this other stuff is going on. You know, they put off releasing the Kennedy papers. Yeah. It's like,
oh yeah, the
why?
UFO stuff.
You were supposed to release the Kennedy papers, and they said we're postponing that release, the documents on what happened to Kennedy, because those that could be negatively affected by the reaction of the community are still alive. What does that tell us? It makes the government look bad. It probably is improbable towards the government. We've got the stuff. We recently just left all that stuff that happened in Afghanistan. All of
which that's a whole thing. But, will I support Biden in the next election if he runs? Yeah. Will I vote for him after Afghanistan? He's going to need to earn my vote on that. That was just one of the most disgraceful. I mean, was he fully to blame for it? No.
Right.
But it was on his watch. And the way that it happened, like especially you had that, you know, the young soccer player falling from the aircraft landing gear. You know, I work with an ex-ANA translator. His family was at that airport. And his family only made it out of there because by the grace of God, one of the colonels in the Marine Corps that he worked with was there and was able to go to the gate with pictures, like, you know, like you would hear the stories of. That was his family. That was the only reason they got out of there. And he came from a very well-to-do family. So it's thinking like the guys with connections barely got their guys out. How did all the normal, you know, just boots on the ground, you know, Afghan soldiers that helped our soldiers for decades, you know, and it feels a lot like a Vietnam moment.
Well, and so again, when you've got Congress passing weary bills that are 200 pages that nobody's read, you know, Astro World controversies, all this stuff's going on. It just seems so perfect that, like, here's a distraction to get our minds out of what's really, you know, our president can't even speak a sentence and he's falling asleep at major conventions, and yet...
Well, I would too if I was at those conventions.
Exactly. Facts, 100%. So, again, while I think part of it is just a manufactured, or even if it's a real event and they're seizing it, it's now turned into its own monster separate from what it really is. So, okay, Kant, when he's a major philosopher in our history, the way he scripted out morality, he said an act is moral in and of itself. You do it for its own good. So helping an old lady across the street, if you help the old lady across the street because there's a cute girl that sees you help her across the street, then that act is not moral. Same act as just walking an old lady across the street, but because you did it because a girl was watching, it's even same act, but immoral. So the ends do justify the means. Or the means justify the ends, sorry. So that's kind of the basis of his approach. So I think the best way, for people that may be opposite of an issue or to parse apart a very complicated issue where the facts are vague, the best approach would be to just kind of script out theoreticals and see where we come out on those facts, because these facts are all mucked up like a quagmire. It's impossible to kind of siphon out what's going on. So Kemp's in Canton. He's 40 minutes away. I'm there all the time, and I work there. My grandma lives there. It's also in a different state. Here's the thing. And we got to talk about where our country was at that time. Again, you did go on kind of a long description of where the prosecutor is failing us. It was sad that everybody agreed. I never spoke to anybody that thought that cop, what he did to George Floyd, was not murder. Everybody agreed. That's the sad part, is we all agreed, and yet instead of getting mad at the police chief who hid this problem, because obviously this cop had a background, instead of getting mad at the prosecutor that took over a month to press charges, we get mad at our neighbor. Yeah. And so when we look at these types of things, I want to just script out, okay, we got an environment where there is destruction going on, and it isn't seeming like people are coming to our defense. I go to work at my courthouse and during this period, at the time at which this was happening, I'm going to work, And we are hearing how, our court was really struggling financially because cops weren't on the streets, laws weren't being enforced, we weren't arresting people or ticketing people. So we didn't have any money. So while crime is at its highest and disarray is everywhere, we pull back on enforcement. So for some of us, especially those that are on the know, they go, who's out here to protect us? So if I've got some family businesses, again, so there's some ifs here. Why you got the gun in your car when you're just going to work at the lifeguard, right? Obviously, you had some intent to go. You weren't just leaving after work.
I live in Cleveland and I concealed carry in my car, so I definitely understand.
Okay, but again, you went and got a license. Yeah. You there's a lot of laws on how to properly have that in your vehicle. You can't just toss a gun in your car, and there's a lot of taxes you got to pay too. And again, he didn't have a handgun because he was 17. The laws for him to get it and have a CCW and everything were so complicated that it was easier for him to legally have this type of gun, which is insane.
Well, funny enough, I believe if he had, because I had my first gun at 14. Interesting enough, yes, even though I am a liberal, I'm also a very pro-gun liberal.
Burn the witch, and you're not allowed to have any opposing opinions.
Because I got my first rifle from my grandfather at 14. Yeah. It was grandfathered to me. Nothing had to be done. It was just my grandpa gave me a gun, and it was a family heirloom, and it qualified. So I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what the laws are in that state, either states in that instance. But I believe he had his grandfather or uncle or something like that give him a handgun. I think that would be covered under the grandfather.
Right.
Which just kind of goes into like how topsy-turvy our enforcement mechanisms are for that. I mean, it's the same with a lot of government bureaucracy. It's just kind of like you're sitting there like, really? That's how that works? Like, I can't own a handgun at 21, but you can give that 11-year-old a handgun as long as it's a gift from grandpa. You can have it.
Right. And but also I want to say, and this is where I think, a lot of us are done a disservice. Mm-hmm. Who did he shoot? A pedophile felon who illegally had a gun. So there's this guy sitting on a bench being made out to be the victim, and yet he was the felon, which means he doesn't listen to rules. Doesn't matter what rule you write down on paper. He's a rule breaker at heart.
So now I do take issue with the whole argument that like, it was a pedophile that came after him and stuff like that. Because you saw the very same thing with George Floyd and a lot of these police shooting cases is they just go down to, because George Floyd did have a past rap sheet with drug history and drug addiction in the past. And a lot of people were saying that, he was just some drug addict that OD'd on meth or something like that. So I always don't like to victim blame so much, not if that's really victim blaming, but basically just because you committed a crime in the past, I don't believe that. So the line is like, you have a felon that's already not obeying the law. Well, it's like, there's specific instances. Like just because I speed or run a red light doesn't mean I'm going to go commit felony murder or something like that.
But
it's just
if we want to talk about the laws of that traffic light, because again, I agree with you 100%. And again, just to lay down a foundation, I have a major problem with felons losing their right to vote. At the end of the day, if I broke a law, I paid my dues, and now I'm a functioning member being placed back into society, I should always continue to have a right to have a say on the laws that are inflicted upon me.
And isn't that a cruel and unusual punishment? And I think it's also unusual. We have the highest prison population in the world, and none of those felons can vote. What primary class and race are those felons in?
But let's just say you draw a line that says this is a rule. I cross that line and now I pay my dues. I should still always have a legal right on my vote, my democratic say on that line. You shouldn't be able to silence me. You cross this line, you're no longer allowed to talk about the righteousness or justness of this line. That's a severe problem. So again, I can completely agree. The reason, however, I raised that gentleman's background is simply to highlight the value in preserving gun rights. Because, again, I think it's a slight pass Democrats like to say of like, look you could go to a gun show, this trickles down families, there's no way to track it, and yet you want to draw lines for those that listen and follow lines. You know who's harmed by that? Only the line followers, only the good guys. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, rule breakers will continue to break those rules. So if you go, rule 1, no one's allowed to have guns. Good guys, listen to it, don't have guns. Bad guys, break the rule, still have guns. So I don't want to have my point misconstrued in that, like I'm projecting that this guy has even a future likelihood of breaking rules.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight that rule breakers break rules, so there's no point of so when people say you shouldn't have guns, they're only saying it to the people who would have it and pose no harm. I also want to bring up now, parallel to that, most of the people who get their guns through this trickle down of family and everything, they get it, and when it's bestowed upon you, and I'd like to know if you had a similar, familial relationship in this situation, but most of the time when they trickle down and they get into your hands, there is a strict strict environment of gun safety that with this, came, so my dad wasn't big into guns, but when it came time for me to learn how to handle guns and everything, I had a really close family friend that went hunting. My dad didn't go hunting. So when I went out with them, it was taught to me strict. I mean, man, if there was one time we're walking through the woods and that barrel wasn't pointed, but when you made a turn and it's down at the ground, but it was still in the direct
muzzle flashing someone.
My ass was chewed. Why? Because just what did that equal to this man? You could kill my son. You're walking behind my son.
If you have even the ability to point a gun at someone, that's a red flag in it. Like I was very much the same thing. My parents are both not very big gun people, but my grandfather, old Kentucky boy, he has a little arsenal. So, and I also, I've been doing airsoft since like 14. So I've always been around, a gun safety culture, even though I was not, my family, my immediate family, my household I grew up in wasn't like, oh, we had guns behind the bed or anything like that. I still, I played with these mock guns and I still do. It's one of my guilty pleasures. And funny enough, I'm usually the lone liberal there, but it's also one of those environments, these guys, I've been playing over 10 years with them. So we have a good bond and, we chew each other out from now and then, but it's always, so gun safety's always been big instilled with me. And I always kind of consider myself a black duck in at least in my liberal sphere when it comes to gun rights, because I also believe that I'm a minority in this country, a gay man. I don't want to say like minority, like white people or anything like that. I just don't want to preface that there. I mean, as someone who's in the LGBT community, please, I just want to mainstream that. I don't want to be skewered for that. But I always I believe that that a minority group's greatest protection here. Like I think if we did Reconstruction where you gave every former freed slave, was it 2 acres and a mule and a shotgun, I guarantee you the KKK wouldn't have risen up that much harder if you gave them all.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I'm firmly believe that minority.
Wait, so is the point you're raising that if those that were the most vulnerable had
the means of self-defense.
Okay. Yeah. They would have been okay?
Yeah, and I think, and funny enough, I've noticed, especially, when the whole Portland thing happened during the election, when Trump sent literally unmarked vehicles full of unmarked federal agents to just seize random protesters. Oh, then all of a sudden I had a ton of liberal friends that bought guns. Like there's a lot of Democrats out there that own guns that aren't really saying anything because they're like, well, I got it when Trump was in office and we thought he was going to seize power, but now there's another Democrat and so now we're apparently all for gun control and all that again. It's like, come on. Like,
and
the hypocrisy.
Okay, I'm going to pose this question to hammer home my final point. Yeah. So the question is then clearly, I want to know, when we talk about how, like you just said, I did airsoft growing up, paintball, all that stuff. When it came to hunting or self-defense of the home, it was strict safety that was trained into you. Who poses more of a danger? Those that got the gun that is uncontrolled or
untrained,
or not even that, undocumented.
Okay,
that it is you know, the serial number isn't in a registry somewhere. We don't know you have this gun, but it's a secret gun in the eyes of the, you know, big brother.
Well, only half of the guns in America are registered.
Right. And again, so I want to pose it strictly these two, but I also want to acknowledge that there are plenty of guns that get trickled down through the system that are just, you know, there's no gun safety taught. It's this bad culture, and that does also pose a danger. But I want to know who poses the bigger danger between these two types of people. The one who gets it through this undocumented trickle down through its familial background, but also is bestowed with strict gun safety because they take it serious and they have appreciation for it, or the person who is going to get it anyway, who lives in maybe his fear of a Trump, you know, unmarked car seizing of the people, or just lives in a hood where life is dangerous and I need to be able to protect my mom or get to the store, so I buy myself you know, serial number rubbed off Glock from my guy. Okay. Which poses a bigger threat?
So I would first answer by saying, obviously, the person who has the gun safety training is going to always be the safer person. But I also think that question kind of locks us into one of those binaries, in that that's the only way that question is, because there could be someone who buys.
So the reason I raised that question, because again, at the onslaught of bringing up the question, I want to acknowledge that there are so many other mitigating factors and situations besides than just these two. The reason, though, I kind of narrow it down to just that, and again, these are not vindictive of the world we live in. But the second question then is, when we start inflicting rules and laws, who is the group that will be affected first?
I think that it depends heavily on. Now, obviously, I know we're angling this with the gun control debate, and I think it does impact law-abiding citizens more on that. But I believe that that's a specific instance, because you know, you could look at something like pot legalization. You have on there a couple. I believe some states are doing where they're expunging, you know, criminal records of people that, you know, that smoked pot illegally when it was illegal in their state or their federal jurisdiction. Sure. Now, obviously, a law-abiding citizen, that's not going to affect you or me that don't, you know, that didn't break the law when it was illegal or anything like that. But so it kind of like reverses that argument. So I think it's very case by case specific. I think in gun control that it does very much affect people who do legally own firearms. But I also think that we have such an inconsistent patchwork. Like, look at, for example, Chicago. I do think, and when I say I'm not a big gun control person, I don't mean that I don't believe in any gun laws or anything like that. I think that we do need to have reasonable regulations. I think that that's a crackhead theory that there shouldn't be any. You know, I'm not a libertarian. I do have a lot of libertarian friends, and I agree with a lot of those ideals. You know, freedom to do whatever you want. But I think some basic rules of the road. I think so. You know, I love people. I love humanity, but the majority of people are idiots. So we need bumper rails. So, like, for example, you know, you look at Chicago. Chicago has one of the strictest gun laws in the country. Well, speaking of, like, you know, going across state border, Gary, Indiana. It's Indiana. They will give a cow a gun if you let them. And where does everyone go to get guns in Chicago? Gary, Indiana. So you can have, you know, it's kind of like when, you know, the whole Trump wall thing. Well, Trump did it in like this area. Well, what did all the migrants do? Well, the wall wasn't built over here. So right, just went around it. So I think it's also, and it's an issue really unique to gun rights, and where I think when it comes to a lot of issues that deal with people's lives, not even taxes are as patchwork. I mean, you know, you have your municipal taxes, and Cuyahoga, I think, is the highest taxed county in Ohio. Glad to be living here now. No, I do love it here, but you look at how inconsistent it is, and it's not something we really see in any. It's not like, you know, if I drive my car to the next county over, even the next state over, it's not like I have, you know, oh, now I have to register it, or oh, that Jeep isn't allowed on county lines. It's not. It is. That's how it is for gun laws, right? But not with anything else. And I think that speaks more to there obviously is a lobby that wants to advocate for it. I think it's both sides. I think there is a lobbying group of mostly, I think, well-intentioned people, genuine, like, I speak mostly about, like, the Sandy Hook activists and everything like that, and Moms Demand Action. I think they mean well. I think they're coming from a place to where they've seen the ugly side of gun violence and they've come to the conclusion, not one that I genuinely agree with, but I do think that, you know, like we're talking about, I trust the place they're coming from.
Right.
But
Yeah,
then you
fair.
also have on the gun lobby, a very dishonest, like big oil, very dishonest, like any lobbying group. It's going to always be dishonest because that's what they're paid to do. And there's a lot of that with the gun market. The NRA is basically a lobbying arm for the biggest firearms manufacturers.
So what are some of those dishonesties? I'm just curious.
So, for example, like the ammo shortage, that's all marketing. And the funny part is, this has been a marketing strategy we've had for over a decade, and it's incredibly successful. It started under Obama. And I remember where everyone was, that's where the whole liberals are going to take your guns. I think that was when Sandy Hook originally happened. Obama was trying to push for big gun control legislation, but an anemic Congress couldn't do anything about it. But that's when you had the narrative start, and that's when the ammo shortage start. But then all the ammo manufacturers were like, hey, if we keep up this rhetoric, we just made a year sale last month. So if we keep pushing this narrative and donating to these media outlets that keep saying like big scary man is going to take your gun, people are going to go out and buy, like think of the COVID, the toilet paper shortage. You know, if you freak people out, you can sell some products. Right. I mean, look at how much companies
toilet paper.
Yeah,
I mean, you nailed it. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. COVID was organized by Charmin to sell more toilet paper. You heard it here first at COVID at the Rethink Tank. but it is a marketing strategy, and there's an artificial shortage of ammo now almost permanently because they're like, well,
dude, they did that with PS5s. I'm sorry. I am 100% of the
like
camp
Supreme or any fashion now.
Yes, they underproduce, so then there's a major demand for it.
All the hype beasts.
Exactly. Everybody was fighting tooth and nail for a PlayStation 5, not because it's a cool device, but because nobody else could get one. I think that's a great point. And so again, playing us for marketing is one thing. Playing us for actual policy action, I think is tougher to find. Why? And it's because arguably I do have a bias. I lean always towards pro-gun, rights. What's interesting, you raise a really cool point. I'm going to use your language because it was cool. There's inconsistent patchwork across our country, our nation. I'm an advocate of the Electoral College. I'm of the camp where you have to let us and this was why it was the founding fathers foresaw, they had a prediction way at the onslaught of this creation of our government that it is most important to preserve local governments. We need to be allowed to police ourselves locally. Why? Because we're all so drastically different. Yeah. And so we can find security and safety amongst each other in numbers. We'll build an economy. We'll build a military. We'll be able to keep ourselves safe and comfortable with each other, but also live localized to where you can, again, there are some people that truly believe there is a machine of people killing babies. There's other people, as Louis C.K. said, having an abortion to some people is just like having a shit. Yeah. And so it's like those are two opposing people. We have to acknowledge that these people think you're killing babies. These people do not. Do we need to live in a world where they police each other? Or can we all just go to our own corners of the world and live amongst ourselves? So there's this beauty of, if you don't like how we're doing it here, go somewhere else.
Look at the Calexit movement.
Yes.
Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, all those guys going to Texas now.
Boom! How cool is that? And having that freedom, our borders are open. And why it's kind of cool to travel amongst our country, similarly to, I've got my big trip to Europe. It's like, once you travel this country, our nation, you learn very quickly how every state is like its own country.
Well, me moving from Cincinnati, the best city in Ohio.
Yeah, there are literally like 3 states in one state. Yeah. Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincy are all drastically different. So please continue your point. I just wanted to say, they're so different, and they're all in the same state. So let's get back to your point, your language of inconsistent patchwork. I am pro-electoral college. I am let the local municipalities and governments govern themselves, and we can all localize amongst our own kinds and just pray and hope that doesn't lead us into such a polarized echo chamber that we turn on ourselves. But you raise a really cool point. That type of approach and framework works for everything except something weird like guns, right? We laughed growing up. Our parents never thought gay marriage would be legal. Then it started popping up in other states, and we just like, okay, well then go to Nevada, get married, and come back. And that worked that way. That's not killing anybody. It's actually just pushing more love.
Well, and I just want to push that from my own personal experience. I'll never forget, like, I think it was 2015. I know it was when I was in college when gay marriage actually got federalized. I mean, which started from a court case that started in Hamilton County, Ohio. In Cincinnati. I got to meet a couple of the lawyers that litigated on the Supreme Court for that. So great. You know, it was an Ohio couple, it was an Ohio plaintiff that got us gay marriage. And even just thinking about
swing votes, but
I remember thinking in high school as a closeted gay kid, just thinking like, there's no I'm going to have a normal life and family, and then all of a sudden, maybe if I moved to Nevada or California or something like that, and then finally this gets legalized, and now you talk to gay people that were a bit younger than us, maybe just in college or in high school or something like that, and then it's just like normal. It's just like, well, yeah, gay marriage was always legal since I could remember, and it's just like how. And I love that. I love how quickly it's normalized where people are like, well, yeah, of course I can live a normal life as a gay or lesbian person. And I think that is one of the bright spots. I always like, I never want to come off as a pessimist too much. So I always like to bring up like these optimistic stories. Like, yeah, America is a messy, dirty democracy. It's messy, it's nasty, and we're at each other's throats. But we also do some good stuff.
Well, so when we talk about how we can have differentiating opinions across the board, none of them really harm us. You can have pot legal here in Michigan and pot illegal here in Ohio, and yeah, you're going to have some people from Toledo go across the border, pick it up, and come back. That doesn't kill anybody. You could have... Look at, like you brought up, Elon Musk. Yeah. You had California taxing way too high on companies who were trying to do green products, and so they just left and went to Texas. So when you have that type of, okay, you could go across, grain alcohol, illegal in Ohio, legal in Indiana, so kids from Miami University,
God bless Indiana,
or Kentucky, go right across the border, get their Everclear, and come right back. Doesn't kill anybody. It's not the end of the world. What makes this a sticky wicket is that you've got a state, like let's just say Chicago or, the state of Illinois, but you've got Chicago, and I pick Chicago because it's like the damn near wild, wild west. Doesn't matter what your laws are, man. They're all shooting each other. So the strictest gun law, the most guns. I am just waiting for the old-fashioned draw in the middle of the streets. That's the only thing we're missing, and horses tied up to the front of the bar. We should have the show The League with Gibson Steakhouse and horses tied out front, because that's what Chicago's like.
Well, and Detroit's the same way, but kind of the opposite. I mean, I do know that they have some gun laws in Detroit, but it's still Michigan. Michigan's a very pro-Second Amendment state. So it's even the cities that do have gun regulations and the ones that don't have gun regulations both still have a ton of gun violence.
Right. Yeah,
Which kind of like the war on drugs, what we found out is, hey, maybe just locking everyone up and passing a bunch of laws doesn't really work. Maybe there's some societal or community-related issues that kind of tackle this.
Well, so the unfortunate approach is why the situation or this topic is forced to be a federal issue is because unlike pot or grain alcohol, if Chicago says, we need this law because that's what's going to protect us, and Indiana says we need the opposite law because this is what's going to protect us, if they both exist in the same world where borders are open and there's free movement amongst each other, it is an impossible policeman. You cannot police this. You will always have people crossing the border, getting their grain alcohol, pot, and guns, and coming right back. So it's impossible to be enforced unless it's across the board. And so again, this is such a unique situation. I think it's the only type of legal policy topic that can't be inconsistent patchworks where you get to do what you want, we get to do what we want. At some point, someone's got to draw the hard line. I think the tough pill to swallow for some of these people are going to be that this line was drawn from the beginning, and most legal scholars are also going to sit back and probably go, it was the right line to draw, and it's that we're all allowed to have it because the bad guys, there's only one approach. So I want to hear your thoughts on, I think it's got to be a federal issue because at this point, you can't have this inconsistent patchwork because it's an all or nothing thing. Chicago, well, it's like a sinking boat with a hole in it. No matter how many buckets of water you're throwing out, if that hole's still open, you're always getting water in your boat. So what are your thoughts on all or nothing? And it may be a hard pill to swallow, but if that's the case, all or nothing, I feel like we got to allow all guns or nothing, and I feel like that's our best option. Is all. So,
kind of going into like with the interstate commerce issue, and kind of going back to the founding fathers really did foresee a lot of issues. You know, they were products of their time. They all have their own, you know, their own faults. You know,
right.
Jefferson really loved banging slaves, so he would definitely get canceled today, probably justifiably so. But you know. Most of the reason why the federal government exists is for issues like this, of interstate commerce.
Right.
You know, it's a state's issue until Ohio's selling corn to Indiana or vice versa. Well, now the federal government's in there.
That's a legal scholar approach. I got to give you that. That's a law degree approach. I got to give it to you.
But yeah, I think that we would just approach this like any other interstate commerce issue. Let the courts debate it out. I mean, think of abortion. Abortion was, you know, a lot like a lot of these issues were, you know, pre-Roe v. Wade, it was, oh, you can get an abortion here, you can't there. And now today, and we have a big Supreme Court case with Texas now, which I hope they probably will lose that because it's kind of crazy that you can like, oh, I know someone that might have helped an abortion. Okay, you can charge them for $20K or something like that, something crazy. But there's still a baseline of, well, abortion has to be legal. It's now there's still litigation and debates about, well, what's that hard line of when it becomes unacceptable? Like, and that's what we're seeing now where it's the 6-week rule and crazy stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the baseline of abortion is legal in some form is still there. And I think we're going to have to, hopefully, I mean, there's going to be a lot of lawyers and judges and legal scholars that know a hell of a lot more than either of us ever will, are going to have to make a determination of what is the legal standing with the case evidence that we have, with what's happening. What is that, you know, we have the bare minimum of we have the right to bear arms. And there is an argument in there, you know, yes, can there be some form of like regulation? I think when you get in the argument where there's no gun laws at all, 100%, I should be able to own a F-16 or something like that. I mean, that's a fun edgelord comment. I like that. That'll trend on Twitter, but it's not a realistic legal argument. So I think that and I don't know what that line is of where is that minimum threshold of, yes, everyone should have the right to bear arms as a constitutional right, to where is that regulation? Do I think that it's something in magazine capacity or bump stocks or anything like that? No. I think that those are Band-Aids on a very incorrect. I mean, look at when we had the federal arms ban in the late 80s and 90s well, now, and you can look, and these are actually collector items now, where they just made AR-15s that, you know, that basically followed the regulations of what was an assault rifle or what wasn't an assault rifle. You still get the same thing today. So I think we need to have a very across the board rethinking of how we're thinking about this, because we have
rethink.
Because the way we're doing it now is just crazy. Like the way we define a long rifle versus short rifle in Ohio, just very antiquated laws that may have made sense at the time, or maybe didn't at the time either, because, you know, politicians were just as dirty 100 years ago as they are now. You know, they didn't become saints overnight because of Twitter. But I really don't know what that looks like with sensible gun reform. Will we get there? Maybe eventually. Who knows? It's democracy.
Yeah, that's it. And again, it will. It's tough to predict, but it will be siphoned out here in the near future. I just want to leave you with one quick narrative, because we kept approaching it, but we never got to put our finger on this final point. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a long thought, but okay, back to, I raised this early on. we got to look at the environment of where we're at this time. You have everything's in shambles. This isn't just in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is a small nothing town.
The whole world
this
was
is
protesting at the
everywhere. It's it's right here in Cleveland. It's right there in Cincinnati. It is in every major city, and it's in little suburb, all white Brecksville, Ohio, where I actually live. It's everywhere. It's in all the little pockets of the world. Okay, so we know it's everywhere. We know what the environment was. At the time, you have Chaz zone. Listen, what happened to the Capitol when we were trying to have a actual and productive conversation on the legitimacy of our election, yes, a terrible act happened.
Yeah, an insurrection.
An insurrection. And while we can all go, that's an insurrection, we still have a current a Chaz zone created itself in one of our states, called itself its own country, continues to persist, and we ignore the fact that that could ever be considered by definition, insurrection.
Well, California has the same issues and same areas in their state. They just call them homeless camps.
Right. So when you have, like, again, this is popping up everywhere. Piles of bricks are being dropped off. You know, the Cleveland local cupcake shop is getting burned down, and nobody's there to help the cupcake guy. Nobody's there to defend it from being... And in fact, it's only being... All the people throwing the bricks or setting the fires are only being encouraged. That's arguably what's going on.
And there's going to be instigators and baiters on either side.
Oh,
of the aisle.
yeah.
I think that it's going back to... You know, this is why I don't believe in prejudice on people, is that, like, all people can be garbage people. I think that's what defeats the whole narrative of racism and this whole eugenic idea of racial superiority, is just like, well, no, you could be a shitty person. It doesn't matter what your racial background is. Yeah, like
100%. So let's paint this picture. Because this leads to a question, I promise. You have this environment where things are in disarray. Now, let's just say you are Kyle Rittenhouse. And I promise this leads to a question for you. If you're Kyle Rittenhouse and all of this is going on around you, when we look at this person and say, you're crazy for thinking you need to go defend this business, or that, again, when I was trying to raise this point, I brought up how the court that I work for is not out fighting for us, enforcing the laws. The police are gone. If you know all of this and that nobody is going to defend your business and nobody is here to come defend your little town of Kenosha, Wisconsin, does it not prove your point that if you didn't defend it, nobody else would, when we need to deploy the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and all of its surrounding major cities? The National Guard, because the people who are going to get the verdict are going to be so unruly and uncivilized that we need the National Guard we're not going to police them. We're not going to stop them. We're just going to contain them. So to me, that only tells me that if it ain't me going out and defending my business, nobody will. And you all have such a... Maybe it's, lack of faith, which is the language they would want to use, but isn't it just a disrespect or disregard for the legal system and its ability to serve justice, that regardless of the system, you are going to be your own Judge Dredd and enforce your It's like, here's the deal. Do we agree that if Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty, the National Guard is not necessary? They will not be used. No, but even though that isn't you said, it's likely this buffoon is going to be found not guilty. So if all the legal facts and even the Democrat media outlets are saying because they're trying to rile up the protesters, it's most likely that he's not going to be found guilty. In the magic aspect of where he is, the people that are painted on his team are still not going to go burn the cupcake shop or throw a stool through Starbucks. So when justice isn't properly served, the National Guard is still not necessary. But when the angry mob doesn't get what it wants, our society is being burned down. Does that not reinforce the need that Kyle Rittenhouse had? Like, I need to go protect this or no one else would. I feel like it supports his position.
So I think when we're talking about how, the National Guard's not going to be needed if the verdict goes one way or the other, I would just like to stipulate with that is very similar situation, Charlottesville. And Charlottesville, you had it wasn't the side that was for police reform. I don't know if that was tied specifically to the horrendous church shooting. Yeah, okay. But if you remember, it was. But then you had Charlottesville. You had the people in tiki torches. You have one guy run over a couple of protesters. So I think that it's unfair to categorize that one side of this would get violent because we've shown that both sides do. Do I think in this specific instance
wait. Do they get here? This is the line I'm kind of highlighting though. Those are solo actors, right? Somebody took a car through a peaceful protest.
Well, not the one where you had groups of tiki torches watching through, like chanting "Jews will not replace us." I mean, this was a whole group of angry, mostly white guys.
Okay, first let's address the guy in a car. That's a solo actor going through a peaceful protest. We have a church. That's a solo actor committing a terrorist attack. Even the crazies with tiki torches saying provocative and inappropriate and devilish things, those are all individual corrupted humans. The opposite is happening where this is a unsatisfied acceptance of the system, right? It's not, I'm going to tell you right now, a guy that gets in a car and runs through innocent people is the devil. Yeah. They're so psychologically broken. They're not, but when you say, so they're not human. That's like a Jeffrey Dahmer.
I get the point you're making.
There is no, all we have in a world where we don't agree and I just want to be able to feed my family and have some fun and laughs in the meantime, if that's a world I want to live in, we have to rely on law and order. We have to rely on nobody's going to come and rob my house. I can drive without, somebody speeding over 50 miles per hour and killing me and my kid on the way to school. Like, I need to have those reliances to function in this society.
The social contract, basically.
The social contract. So if I sign on to this social contract and go, I want to be a functioning member of this society, there are going to be times where the system fails me, but it's because we're in the overarching, listen, it's not going to catch everybody and it's not going to save everybody, but for the most part, it works. If we rely on that for our day-to-day, you can't just burn the whole city down the second you don't get what you want. It's the system we got to rely on. That's why there's an appeal process. That's why, and at the end of the day, most of the time, you didn't get what you wanted because the system did its job. Like, it's going to work the opposite. Like you said, you brought up two cases where these people got, the red people got what they wanted in this one, the blue people got what they wanted in this one, and yet, so you said, you brought that up because you said that can't be vindictive of how people react. I agree. But we need to be able to go when we get our verdict, whether it's for blue or it's red, you got to accept it and you got to play the game. Just like a thing I say all the time when it comes to police misconduct towards minorities. There is obviously a systemic problem. But also, we need to start having the conversation that, if you keep telling your kid that talking to a cop is a murder sentence, so they start fighting for their life, it's probably going to result in your death. We need to start having these approaches where it's like, have faith in the system. And I, as somebody who goes there every day and watches how our system's mucked up and how people get screwed, if we don't start investing and caring in that system, it's all for naught. So we need to have faith in it because that's the only thing propelling us to strive for better in it. Does that make any sense?
No, I completely see your point, and I do echo your sentiment in that the justice system isn't perfect, but it's the best we got, and we need to invest all the resources we can. Because at the end of the day, yes, there is going to be a partisan message on, you know, the other two branches of government. And yes, is there partisan influence in judge elections and even Supreme Court nominations? Yes, but comparative to the other two branches of government, the judiciary is pretty on its own. They do whatever decision they come down with is the decision that is upheld. Unless you're President Jackson and the courts tell you, hey, don't kill all those Indians. And he's like, well, I'm going to kill all those Indians anyway. But that was a different time. It was a different time. So I think, yes, we do need to have that common social contract of the legal system is going to work itself out. And I do think that we shouldn't be in a culture where we're glorifying people burning down cities. And like what you were saying with a lot of those individual acts, like someone running a car in or mass shooting on a church, that's not indicative of the entire crowd. It's I would ask that you give the same latitude to the protesters, like the Black Lives Matter protesters, the people protesting social injustice, is that it's the same thing. Most of those people aren't burning down buildings. And frankly, I would say the people that are burning down buildings and looting stores they just want to watch the world burn. They don't give a shit who killed who or what injustice is happening. They're just saying like, well, Kroger's on fire. You want some free steaks? Hell yeah! And I think that's all those people who are looters and rioters. That's where I equate them. The same.
So why aren't people getting compelled or upset when these people are fighting under your veil? They're fighting as you, right? So like when we look at the January 6th stuff and they go, you're painted as a red person, Republican bad, you're the wrong. I quickly, and again, I'm not concerned. I am not Republican, but I'm just not Democrat, so I'm forcing a box.
And didn't it unfold like live here on the show? I remember I was watching
it happen. Yeah. And so you go, this is messed up. This is a problem. And what really compels me to want to advocate against this is that you've got dumb, uneducated, terroristic clowns fighting under the veil of me, right? So in the public sector, in the national arena, in the conversation, I am equated to that. That compels me to damn and discourage that behavior as much as possible and advertise my disdain for it because I want to remove myself from that as much as possible.
You don't get labeled. Well, I had to do the same thing.
Why do we not see that for these rogue Antifa actors who are not Democrats, but are fighting under the veil of good as progressive loving people, and yet they're peaceful protesters? Nobody wants to acknowledge the stool through a Starbucks is no longer peaceful protest.
I would say that we do have to, because I had to do, because I worked in Ohio during the 2020 election for the Democratic Party, for our state party on a local election in Cincy. And that was our biggest thing. When that all happened, we had to go out there and say, like, we are for, we're not wanting to defund the police. We're for police reform. We're not for violent we had to do the same. We lost, we had the FOP chapter in our county actually rescinded their, and this was, I think 2 months after the fact, they rescinded their endorsement because my candidate, the woman that I worked for, she went on the news and said, well, yes, I believe it, because she came from a family of police officers. So she said, yes, I believe that Black Lives Matter and that there are good cops out there. She took the position that the binary doesn't want us to believe that, like, oh, it's not just us versus them. There's actually agreement here. And she just said the sensible thing, like, of course Black Lives Matter. And of course we need to support police officers when they're in the right, and when they're in the wrong, they need to be held accountable. I think that they should be held to a higher standard of accountability because if you're enforcing the rules, you should be held a lot stricter, kind of like what we should do in Congress, but we don't really do that. So I think that, and I think that's where the corporate media that rules both sides of the aisle and news that we like, or that speaks to us, is, well, we can't have that narrative because then we would agree. Because what I had to do in 2020 is what you had to do after January 6th is I had to say, no, I'm not Antifa. I'm not here. Because that's all the mailers that we got in our local campaign was your candidate. She's AOC. She wants to defund the police. She wants your kids to, she wants to eat your babies and stuff like that. All that standard Republican GOP strategist talking points. So I had to say exactly what you had to do after January 6th. We both had to say, like, yeah, these people are acting supposedly on our side, but they're not. So I think that does exist on both sides, but we just aren't able to talk about that.
That is so beautiful. That's the damnation of these echo chambers, and also the need and support for these types of conversations. Because again, if I'm so trapped in my echo chamber and I get to blindly march forward of, well, look at them, they never acknowledge the damnations of their bad guys. I got to say the Proud Boys are bad and stand down and stand by and all the dumb shit that we do. We got to point out Orange Man bad, but they never point out that, and yet it is. They do make those acknowledgments. You just don't hear them because you're not having conversations with people that are different than you. You're not getting outside your echo chamber. As wrapping up thoughts, how would you suggest combating that? Besides, obviously, manifest destiny, what created this country and what most goodness is found in is these types of conversations. But aside of just an open discourse with somebody different than you, how would you advise combating getting caught in that evil cycle?
I would say, and you know what, and this is something that I would say was instilled in me by my dad. All of my political interest and debating and stuff like that came from since I was a little kid, and my dad was the arch Republican, Bill O'Reilly on every night, and absolutely yelled at each other and debated, but my dad allowed me. Like, we were able to have that conversation, even though I was a 10-year-old kid, and, of course, my dad knew more about the world than I did. He would still humor me and have that debate. So that's why it always instilled me from an early age of the majority of what I consume is going to be from people I don't agree with. I listen to a wide variety of podcasts. I listen to Pod Save America, which is very left-wing. Breaking Points with Crystal and Sager, I would say is probably one of the best news podcasts that kind of cuts through the bullshit in that, because, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. They're not like your typical Democrat or Republican, but they really cut through a lot of the BS. I would say just listen to people you don't agree with, and that you're going to self-challenge yourself. Well, why do I because then you don't get in that space of where you see Orange Man bad, or anyone who votes for Trump is a fascist, or anyone who votes for Biden is a communist. If you're just talking to people you don't agree with and you're mainly consuming that, I mean, if I do have to watch a news channel, I put on Fox News. Not that I agree with it, but because I know what lies they're telling me. They're telling me a lie for the GOP. But I also want to know what is the other side saying. Because if I just know what my side's saying, I only know half the story, and I'm already going to lose that debate. You need to, and not saying that like you got to get knowledge so you can spy on the enemy and know what they're doing. But it's just like if you don't know what the other people are thinking or saying, then you're really just self-serving yourself in an echo chamber. So I encourage everyone, consume media you don't agree with, and ask yourself, why don't I agree with it? Is it because of an actual belief, or is it just I've only been listening to a certain viewpoint and I'm accustomed to that?
I think that was sound advice. Great advice to end on. And the unfortunate thing is, we keep telling... The problem is you're trying to fight echo chambers and you want to provoke people to get out. We live in a world where everybody wants to have the political opinion. Everybody wants to be LeBron James, who
Everyone
just
has to have a
pops
platform
in and drops a provocative tweet and then drops right back out. Everybody wants the political opinion without having to do any of the political homework. And the sad part is it takes some work. You don't just get to pop on bench. The beauty is before, and I really have to limit conversations before the podcast. I do a good job of like, wait, save that for because you don't want to flush out a topic too much and then you're regurgitating stuff and everything else. But before the podcast, Paul, you were bringing up how, you didn't know we were going to be talking about this today, but just to stay informed and stay in the loop, you had a couple other sources, but you listened to Ben Shapiro, of all people, on the way here. Ironically, I listened to Ben Shapiro, and then after it, I balanced it with MSN and CNN to kind of get, and so, again, I don't have the time, and, all these people who do nothing but like go to their accountant job, go to the gym for an hour, and then make mac and cheese and play Xbox until they go to bed. They get to tell themselves like, I work so hard and I got no time. And
I
it's
read
like
3 Facebook articles. I'm
exactly, and that kills me too. Where Facebook does articles, and now if you look, every article says approximately 2-minute read, approximately 3-minute read, and it's like you're never going to get all of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial in a 2-minute read. It's just too complicated. So one, we're just scratching the surface, reading titles, living off of the article titles, and using that as law. And the sad part is either don't involve yourself in the conversation, or if you want to be involved, you want to be a player in this game, you want your vote to actually count for something, you can't just pop in and listen to Ben Shapiro or just listen. You got to have variations, because there's going to be little nuggets of truth across them all, buried across a whole lot of propaganda and lies. And the only way to find those nuggets of gold is to see what overlaps, the truths that lie amongst them all, because then you can see right and flush out all the bullshit.
Yep.
So
100% agreed.
I greatly appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to kind of bounce things off of you. Paul, like Breaking Points, we're going to need to get you on here more often just so I can have somebody to balance my craziness.
Well, now that I'm a local Clevelander now, I guess I'll have to.
Oh, for sure. And you keep me balanced, and you're so informed. Like, there's so many little... It's very much overlooked, the little nuggets of just, like, history and fact that that just keeps it fun. So I appreciate the great conversation, Paul.
Well, it's an honor. Thank you for having me on here, and I hope to be back soon.
Oh, very much so. Okay, so following that thread, wrapping up, guys, thank you so much for watching. If we made you laugh, if we made you think, the best thing you could do to support this podcast is to share this episode. Send it to a friend, post it on your Facebook, grab that link and spread it out, because the best thing you do to support us is to share the episode. Don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button.
Smash the hell out of it.
And for all of our Rethink Tank content, if you want to find all our sketches and everything else, you can find all the content at our website, www.rethinktankpodcast.com. And other than that, guys, I appreciate you giving us your time, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next one. Paul, thank you, brother.
The pleasure as always.
And guys, we'll catch you next time. Peace.